Lesson 101. All right, so with IntelliJ open, we're going to create a new project. Select Spring Initializer on the left. Make sure that your project SDK has a value listed. If it tells you, if it's in red, it's giving you an error and there's something you need to fix. And select Next. And then here, we're going to first create a name for our package. I always call mine my AJ, and then a name for my application. So I'm going to call it Spring Boot 101. And so my package will be com.byaj.springboot101, and yours will be whatever you name yours. So you can see my package name down here. I'm going to select Next. And here we select our dependencies. To find the web dependency, you need to look in the web group, and then we can select Spring Web. For the Timeleaf dependency, you want to look at template engines, and then I'll select Timeleaf. And then over here on the right, you can see the dependencies, the packages that will be included in our application when it's built. I'll select Next. This tells it where it's going to save it in the project name. I'll select Finish and let IntelliJ do its thing. Now what's going to happen is it's going to spend some time downloading some things. You'll see a progress bar down in the lower right hand corner. I've built this several times, so it loads really fast for me. It might take a while for you, but wait until this button up here actually has the name of an application. This is your run button. But once it does, you'll have your project name on this left pane. So let's expand that, expand source, expand main, expand Java, and expand your package. This is a file that's created for you by Spring Boot. It is the Spring Boot application within your application. Don't touch it. We'll talk about why that's there in a later lesson, but for right now, just know that if you touch it, you can potentially break it. So we're going to take our package, right click, and select New Class. We're going to create a class called Home Controller. And inside of Home Controller, we are going to add an annotation to our class declaration. So at controller, and see this list that appears? This controls the imports that my code is going to use. So I want this import, the controller import. So I'll just double click on it. And we need a request mapping. This tells your application what endpoints for the web that it's going to respond to, and we'll talk about what those mean later. And I got my import for that, and public string, I'll call it index. It doesn't really matter what I call the method. I think it's slightly different in the book, but for the sake of argument, I'll just call my method index, and I'll say return index. The important thing is that whatever you're returning here, this is the name that your template has to have. So inside of resources, we're going to create a template called the same exact thing. So you can see this is returning index. I'm creating a template called index. And then this is the template that it will use to display whenever we need to use that root mapping. So this is where I'm going to say hello world. So this web page is going to pop up whenever this method gets run. And this method is going to get run whenever somebody uses the web interface to pull up this endpoint. So let's run it and show you what I mean. We're going to hit the run button in the upper right hand corner of your application, and we're going to get a bunch of information displayed at the bottom to show you how far Spring has gotten with running your application. Once it says, like after it says Tomcat started on port 8080, and it tells you started Spring Boot 101 application, then we know we can go ahead and take a look at our application and that it's running on port 8080. And I'll tell you why that's important. So if we just go to localhost, we'll get an error because it doesn't know what that is. But we say localhost :8080, That's where our Spring application is working. And this is the hello world that we put into our template. So our application works, and it's just that simple.